Okay, welcome to the collection. Hopefully I can make you some recommendations from the catalogue of titles here of my DVDs. By no means a complete collection. There are many titles missing, which I'll mention as we go along. We'll go from top to bottom, and I've placed them all in some kind of order for us to look at today. So I'm going to start in the top right section, my childhood classics. Start with the epic Spielberg classic, The Goonies. You remember Captain Chunk, Sloth, and One-Eyed Willie. Story of fun, adventure and danger. Absolutely brilliant title there. And one that was on repeat a lot as a child. Hiding here was Robin Hood and the Prince of Thieves. Kevin Costner as Robin Hood. The late Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham. And we also had Christian Slater and Morgan Freeman in that one. And we have Hook there, with Robin Williams, Julia Roberts. A movie with a brilliant soundtrack, 80s classics, was the original Karate Kid, starring the iconic Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi, who took young Daniel under his wing and converted him into a karate master who defeated the bullies. John Hughes was a brilliant director. Here is his classic Christmas tale, Home Alone. Goes on every year in the household. One of my favourite actors, who we unfortunately lost in 2016, was Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka. You'll remember the sing-alongs and Charlie's Journey. Story about humility, purity and honesty there. We had the remake, titled Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, with Johnny Depp. And here was Gene Wilder doing what he did best, comedy. Who can forget Wilder alongside Pryor? Stir Crazy is a side splitter. They did 3 or 4 together. Also shout out to See No Evil and Hear No Evil. My favourite actor was alongside Pryor in Brewster's Millions. John Candy there, who we lost in the 90s. And then we move on to the iconic duo of De Niro and Pesci. We have 3 Scorsese movies here. Many people had Goodfellas as their number 1. And it is up there. There's the late Ray Liotta there. Raging Bull wasn't really up there for me. But what was the story of greed, power and violence. Scorsese's Casino, in my top 5 movies ever made. Absolutely love that one. Highly recommend Casino. We have 2 movies from the Dollars trilogy in my top 5 movies of all time. We have The Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood as Blondie in The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, epic classic, spaghetti western, Leone. Fistful of Dollars from the trilogy, and we're just missing For a Few Dollars More. Next up, a story of brotherhood, 4 young boys searching for their dead friend. Very poignant story, starring a young Corey Feldman, and I believe Kiefer Sutherland was in that one as well. Very poignant. Okay, my favourite actor, doing what he does best, comedy. You will remember Uncle Buck. He comes to babysit the kids. He has his unorthodox methods and own brand of humour. You will recall Bug from Uncle Buck. John Candy alongside Dan Aykroyd in The Great Outdoors there. And the classic Candy and Martin in Planes, Trains and Automobiles. Neil just wants to get home for Thanksgiving, but he encounters Del Griffiths, and then the comedy begins. Absolute classic, with a sad ending sort of as well. Next is Seven, you all know about that one. Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman. Eddie Murphy alongside Aykroyd, Trading Places. Many people's favourite movie is here. The Shawshank Redemption. No surprises to see Morgan Freeman again. Now from around 2007 or 2008 was the classic American Gangster. It's one of my favourites, with Denzel playing Frank Lucas, drug lord, and Crow as the detective trying to catch Lucas. All-star cast in this one. I remember there were a few rappers. We had Common, we had Razor from Wu-Tang Clan, and T.I. Brilliant thriller. All-star cast there. The classic Training Day, Denzel and Ethan Hawke there. Another one in my top 5 or top 6 is the iconic Gladiator, Russell Crowe. Epic and spectacular. Lovely music as well in that. Another one in the upper echelons for me was Boys in the Hood. Absolute classic. Ice Cube, also a very good actor, alongside Cuba Gooding. Very sad, very eye-opening one there, classic. And then something a little bit more subtle from Ice Cube was the Comedy Friday. They made 3 or 4 together, alongside Chris Tucker. I'm sure you've all seen Friday. And from the Arnie collection, one of my favourites, Predator. Set in the jungle. Predator 2 was not too bad with Danny Glover. That was set in the city. You'll remember King Willie. And then 3 more Arnie titles. Fortunately we're missing Terminator 2, another classic. But we have The Running Man, where Arnie enters the game show with Deadly Consequences. Commando. Plenty of Arnie one-liners in that. And then True Lies at the end there. So that's the upper row. Let's move on to the second row down. Okay, now I'm going to introduce you to my favourite genre, horror. I have a few horrors here. There are obviously many missing, and I've seen a lot more horrors than this. Shout out to Paranormal Activity, my favourite series, 1, 2, 3, 4, Marked Ones, Ghost Dimensions, and Next of Kin, which is the latest, very good. I'm going to start with a 99 movie, I believe, that really catapulted my favourite found footage style into the spotlight. That was the Blair Witch Project. Every now and then when I'm looking for a scare, I'll pop that on. And I like horror movies that could be true, those that leave you thinking that they could be true. Top of many people's list of horror movies is The Exorcist. I'm sure you've all seen The Exorcist, and you remember the little girl. Of Halloween Hiding there, one of my favourites, starring Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix. Signs there. If you're looking for an alternative to Paranormal Activity, you might want to consider Paranormal Entity. We have the 4 here in box set form. First one was very good. The other 3, not too bad. 30 Days of Nights. And a movie that I've never been able to watch twice due to the gruesomeness. Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre there. I'm sure you all remember Leatherface. Alien quadrilogy here, Ridley Scott's Alien. Okay, if you're looking for something to watch that you've not seen before, may I recommend Hannibal, starring the world's best dressed man, Mads Mikkelsen. So check out the Shirts, Suits and Ties. Also starring Larry Fishburne as the detective. So please give Hannibal a go. A couple of Bond movies here, and then we're into comedy. So you have The Simpsons, Beverly Hills Cop, Eddie Murphy. Okay, some great 80s music, Beverly Hills Cop. Comedy that my father used to watch and I used to watch with him. He used to absolutely love, Laurel and Hardy. So we've got 4 titles there. One of them is Them Thar Hills. And at the back we have Be Big. Iconic comedy duo there. Guess Who, starring Bernie Mac. Will Ferrell in Anchorman. The controversial but very funny Borat. His journey from Kazakhstan to America. Dumb and Dumber, Jim Carrey. And my 2000s comedy, or what I grew up on, comedy-wise, in the early 2000s was Jackass. Shout out to Phil Margera. Then we have Scary Movie, The Royal Family, White Men Can't Jump. So I want to go back to the horror and shout out a couple of titles. Obviously the Paranormal Activity series is my favourite. I want to recommend VHS series if you've not seen those, especially 1 and 2. And also REC, R-E-C, which is a Spanish horror series. You'll enjoy that. And also Patrick Bryce's Creep 1 and Creep 2. So let's move down one section. Okay, here we are. We have some comedy here. Box sets. A few random DVD titles. We have Gambon, Miller and Daniel Craig's Layer Cake. British London gangster type. We have England's Test victory at Edgbaston over the Aussies. We had 4 fabulous bowlers, a quartet of Flintoff, Harmison, Hoggard and Simon Jones. Helped us to defeat the Aussies. One of my favourite rappers. Tupac Resurrection there. Football there. Another good film if you've not seen, Liam Neeson in The Grey. It's about wolves. That's a really good one, that. Then we've got The Fast and the Furious, Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Eminem's 8 Mile, Deja Vu, Denzel Washington and The Life of Ryan there. Now, we're going to move on to my most favourite sitcom of all time, which I still watch to this day, Frasier. The complete box set here. I believe it's actually going to make a comeback, which I'm a little bit upset about. I think it should be left as it is. So there's Eddie. And I remember in the 90s you either watched Frasier or Friends. Friends was obviously very, very popular as well, very big. But I fell into the Frasier category. Absolutely love that. Favourite sitcom of all time. And moving on here, we have one from the horror segment. Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece collection. Who can forget Psycho and the Birds? Psycho was absolutely fabulous. So a few more titles. Topaz, Vertigo, Rear Window, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Rope, as well as many more. On to some British comedies here. then, let's go to my favourite British comedy series of all time, Suit You Sir, rather like Making Love to a Beautiful Woman, was The Fast Show, highly recommended. I also enjoyed Men Behaving Badly as well. I very much enjoyed the trials, tribulations and pitfalls of getting old. Richard Wilson was Victor Meldrew. That was an absolute classic. And number one for most people, and it's up there for me, was the number one. Only Fools and Horses. You remember Del Boy, Rodney, Uncle Albert and Grandad. Set in Peckham, London. Wheeler and Dealer. And then going back to here, you remember Father Jack. He liked to drink. There's Father Jack. In the Irish classic, Father Ted. Okay, so that's that section covered. I can't think if there's any more whether we need to mention, but we're going to move to the final row down here. Okay, last but not least, the final row. So we have the classic Fresh Prince of Bel-Air here, seasons 1 to 4. Shout out to Carlton, Alfonso, and James Avery, who we sadly lost, Uncle Phil. I'm sure many people could relate to Uncle Phil. And then moving on to my favourite box set of all time. I'm sure many of you love the X-Files, absolute classic, David Duchovny and the versatile Gillian Anderson. Who can forget the classic episodes, Squeeze, Tombs, Ice, Fire, The Host. And my favourite episode, I think from season 6, was Detour. So that was X-Files. Still watch that to this day on Disney Prime. But I do have the box set in case it was to disappear. And I also want to give out a shout to, with box sets, Frasier and X-Files. My third favourite would be Breaking Bad. So I hope you've enjoyed the collection and that you can pluck 1 or 2 recommendations from this. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. I'll answer them, and I'll see you again next time.